Example 7, bone density test, finding a z-score using StatCrunch. Now, scores of a bone density test are normally distributed with a mean of 0 and a standard deviation of 1. So they meet the requirements of a standard normal distribution. Find the bone density test score that separates the bottom 2.5% and find a score that separates the top 2.5%. Now, the first thing we want to do is we want to be able to draw a bell curve and identify the region under the curve that corresponds to the bottom 2.5%, which is the same thing as 0.025, and the area that corresponds to the left of the top 2.5%, which is 0.025. So let's go ahead and do that. So we draw our picture, we draw our bell curve. Okay, and then what we know here is that in the middle here is the mean. And so on the left hand side and then the right hand side we have two areas. Okay, this area is going to represent 0.025, and then we know that this area is going to represent 0.025. And so what we want to do is we want to find out what is the z-score here and then what is the z-score here. Because again, these are two different z-scores. Now keep in mind, to the left of 0 is going to be a negative value. To the right of 0 is going to be a positive value. So let's go ahead and highlight our areas. So this area represents 0.025, and then this area here represents 0.025. Okay, now when we're using StatCrunch, okay, we can use what we can find is the area in between. So if we want to find the area in between, we want to determine what is the area that's in between the bottom 2.5% and the top 2.5%. So if we're looking for this area in between here, okay, we know that the entire area under the curve is 1. So if the entire area under the curve is 1, okay, then what we can do is subtract whatever we have that's given from 1. So 1, we're going to subtract the area on the left, which is 0.025, and then we're going to subtract the other area on the right, which is 0.025. Okay, that's the same thing as saying 1 minus 0.05. And that gives us a total area of what's in the middle here, which is 0.95. So you can see here that that's going to give us 0.95 or 0.9500. So now what we're going to do is we're going to use StatCrunch to figure out what is that, or what are those z-scores. So let's go ahead and open up StatCrunch. Okay, now again, we're going to click Stat, and then we're going to go to Calculators, and then select Normal for our normal distribution. Okay, now again here it says in the calculator box, we want to make sure that the mean is 0. So the mean is 0. And we also want to make sure that the standard deviation is 1. So the standard deviation is 1. Okay. Now, since we are looking for the scores that separate the bottom 2.5% and the top 2.5%, we want to select the between at the top menu. So we're going to select between. Okay. And so now what we want to do is, since we're looking for the z-scores, we need to enter the area that's in between. Well, we found the area that's in between, which is 0.95. So let's go ahead and put that in here. So we're going to put in 0.95. And then you're going to select Compute. Now when you select Compute, you're going to see what those z-scores are. So let's go ahead and then just copy this. Okay. And then what we can do is we can now fill in what our z-scores are. So that means that on the left we have negative 1.96, and then on the right you can see that we have positive 1.96. So again, we want the z-scores that separate the bottom 2.5% and the top 2.5%, And StatCrunch provides the scores of negative 1.96 and positive 1.96. So let's see the interpretation. For the population of bone density test scores, 2.5% of the scores are equal to or less than negative 1.96, and 2.5% of the scores are equal to or greater than 1.96. Another interpretation is that 95% of all bone density test scores are between negative 1.96 and positive 1.96.